This video is brought to you by the Rijksmuseum's Rijkstube. After this video, check out their channel by hitting the link in the description. What's up, Wisecrack? Helen here to talk about Huey Lewis's #1 fan.
You like Huey Lewis in the news?
I think that's all he's really known for. American Psycho has always been a lightning rod for controversy. The book by Bret Easton Ellis was infamously scrapped by its initial publisher amidst uproar over its depictions of violence. So it's not surprising that the film version, released 9 years after the book's publication, has become similarly controversial. Now, this video will be focused on the more controversial aspects of the film, not the book. Sure, some of these points may dovetail with Ellis's novel, but for the purposes herein, everything we state just applies to the movie. Most of the controversy surrounding American Psycho stems from how people perceive it. Is the film a critique on the consumerism and superficiality of 80s yuppie culture? Or does the film's excess actually glorify this lifestyle? And what to make of the film's violence, particularly towards women? Some proclaim American Psycho a feminist masterpiece, while others have labeled it misogynistic. So, which is it? Further, what exactly are we supposed to make of Patrick Bateman? Anti-hero? Villain? Or none of the above? Let's find out in this Wisecrack edition on American Psycho, Deep or Dumb. And of course, spoilers ahead. Alright guys, first, a quick recap. American Psycho is set in 1988, the heyday of the rich yuppie Wall Streeter. Patrick Bateman fits this stereotype to a T. He's a handsome, wealthy businessman way more obsessed with dining at the trendiest restaurants than in, well, actually working. Bateman's life is all artifice. On the surface, he has a beautiful fiancée and a close-knit group of friends. But dig a little deeper, and you see he actually hates them all. Not only that, but as a side hustle, Patrick murders homeless men and prostitutes. Patrick's world begins to crumble soon after he brutally murders a business rival, Paul Allen, and a detective begins to look at him as a suspect. The line between reality and fantasy blurs as Patrick descends into madness and goes on a gory killing spree. However, despite murdering dozens of people, nobody seems to care. In fact, there are seemingly no bodies. And when Patrick does confess to Paul Allen's murder, he's told Paul's still alive.
I had dinner with Paul Allen twice in London, just 10 days ago.
So, what gives? Did Patrick actually kill anybody? Was it all in his head? Or does it even matter? American Psycho satirizes the shallow consumer lifestyle of the 1980s. The film revels in excess. From the extravagant dinners
and grilled free-range rabbit with herb french fries
to Bateman's overindulgent morning routine.
I believe in taking care of myself, in a balanced diet and a rigorous exercise routine. In the morning, if my face is a little puffy, I'll put on an ice pack while doing my stomach crunches.
Patrick's obsessed with his status among the wealthy Wall Streeters, whether it be his ability to procure a reservation at Dorsia, the hippest restaurant of the moment.
Dorsia.
Yes, I know it's a little late, but is it possible to reserve a table for 2 at 8 or 8:30 perhaps?
Or his grooming. It's no coincidence that Bateman repeatedly references the Trump name.
Is that Donald Trump's car? Is that Ivana Trump?
In the 80s, Trump was synonymous with excess. He was the ultimate yuppie, a billionaire Wall Street business tycoon with a bombshell wife and $10,000 suit. Just take it from Trump himself. When asked for a 1987 Newsweek article whether he was the ultimate yuppie, Trump responded rather succinctly, yeah, maybe. Or take this description of his 1985 apartment in Architectural Digest. Every surface of the home shimmers like liquid gold, covered with fabric painted in 24-karat gold, in the gold leaf ceilings, and in the crystal chandeliers and candlesticks throughout. The dining room shimmers with Tiffany's glassware, resting on a mahogany table embellished with strips of gold leaf. The dining chairs are from Dongya Furniture, and the Alexander Lieberman composition is titled Gate 26. Similarly, Patrick Bateman is focused on the minutiae that defines his elite status. His bed sheets.
You can't bleach a cheruti. Out of the question. 2, I can only get these sheets in Santa Fe. These are very expensive sheets.
His skincare routine.
I use a deep pore cleanser lotion. In the shower, I use a water-activated gel cleanser. Then a honey almond body scrub. And on the face, an exfoliating gel scrub.
And his business cards. Mostly his business cards. Let's take a quick moment to give props to Christian Bale's performance. This really is an acting showcase for the ages. Bale takes absurdity and turns it into high drama. Just look at how he reacts to something as trivial as a business card's font, somehow making Helvetica feel like the end of the world.
I can't believe that Bryce prefers Van Patten's card to mine.
Bale nails the satirical tone of the film, at once showcasing how nonsensical this minutia is, yet also making it sadly believable that this could be so important to a status-conscious yuppie. Everything in Patrick Bateman's life is commodified and rated, used as tokens of his perceived superiority to others. American Psycho uses material objects to comment on the superficiality of its characters. Everyone in the film is vapid and self-absorbed, way more concerned with how they look and how others perceive them than in the actual conflicts happening in their periphery. The film is punctuated with dinner conversations about the state of the world.
But what about the massacres in Sri Lanka, honey?
When Price mentions the genocide in Sri Lanka, Bateman one-ups him, stating the real issue they should all be worried about is,
Well, we have to end apartheid for one, and slow down the nuclear arms race, stop terrorism, and world hunger. We have to provide food and shelter for the homeless, and oppose racial discrimination and promote civil rights, while also promoting equal rights for women. We have to encourage a return to traditional moral values. Most importantly, we have to promote general social concern.
but Patrick is only interested in using these real-world problems as a form of one-upsmanship, to prove he's better than Price. When actually confronted by a homeless person, Bateman doesn't provide him with food or shelter or money, he just brutally stabs him.
What a f***ing loser you are.
Later, when Price asks Patrick what he thinks about the Iran-Contra scandal, Bateman reveals his true feelings about these worldly conflicts.
Whatever.
Patrick is often mistaken for other people. Paul mistakes Patrick for another business associate.
Great tan, Marcus.
And later, Patrick's lawyer thinks he's someone named Davis.
By the way, Davis, how's Cynthia?
This highlights the artifice of Patrick and his friend's lifestyle. In a society preoccupied with acquiring goods at all cost, nobody cares much about any of the other people around them. Everybody's the same and completely interchangeable. All that really matters is the suits and jewels they wear, the yachts they party on, and the restaurants they dine in. In American Psycho, class is a competition, a sport, reflective of Thorstein Veblen's theories on what he calls the leisure class, particularly conspicuous consumption. Per Veblen, conspicuous consumption is the consumption of goods as an evidence of pecuniary strength. It is a means of reputability to the gentleman of leisure. Basically, to prove you're better than everybody else, you have to show it, be it a larger house, fancier clothes, or shinier bling. Similarly, Patrick Bateman always defines himself in relation to others. He hates Paul Allen because he can get into fancier restaurants and his business card is nicer. On the other hand, Patrick thinks he's better than his doppelganger Marcus because he has a slightly better haircut. Patrick's intent on proving his superiority, lecturing lower-class prostitutes on the meaning behind Genesis and Whitney Houston's oeuvre.
I've been a big Genesis fan ever since the release of their 1980 album, Duke.
The fact that he takes such pride in trivial knowledge is, in itself, the point. Bateman flaunts his wealth and knowledge to prove that he's better than others. According to Veblen, much of this is inherited from our more primitive past. The lower status people did all the productive work, while the higher status people were tasked with the honorable duties of hunting and killing. Far less productive behaviors than, say, farming. As if a nod to Veblen, Bateman uses his prestige to be both incredibly unproductive, but also take up the hobby of murder. The film goes on to suggest that beneath Patrick's need for fancy suits and a better apartment lies a literal bloodlust. Consumer capitalism as an actual blood sport. Bateman's murderous inclinations are presented as the truth lurking beneath the facade of his superficial lifestyle. At the start of the film, Patrick comments that there is nothing to him. He's just a shell of a person.
There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there.
Yet by the end, after Patrick has succumbed to murdering people, giving in to his baser desires, he becomes whole.
You're inhuman.
No, I'm in touch with humanity.
By acknowledging his need for money only hides his baser desire to kill, Patrick is self-actualized, albeit as a serial killer. Ostensibly, American Psycho signifies that the true nature of the consumer capitalist is, well, a cold-blooded serial killer. So it would seem that this is obviously a deep film, but despite being a savage critique on consumerism, people still can't help themselves. There's something undeniably seductive about Patrick Bateman. The Patrick Bateman lifestyle is pervasive in our culture. Mr. Porter, a clothing store, put out a whole line based on dressing just like Patrick Bateman. There are articles on how to replicate Patrick Bateman's grooming style, looking back at the restaurants he dined at, and where he would dine today. There's even a video that gives you a 3D tour of Bateman's apartment. So why are people so infatuated with Patrick Bateman despite the fact that he's a deranged murderer? Well, parody seems to have a tendency to offer competing interpretations of the thing it parodies. It both legitimizes and subverts its subject. And American Psycho, for all its subversive merits, does revel in excess. I mean, Patrick is handsome, good with the ladies, has a beautiful apartment, a well-paying job. Who wouldn't want that lifestyle? Plus, American Psycho often plays Patrick's more monstrous acts as comedic, or just cuts away from them entirely. When Patrick kills Paul Allen, it's played as comedy, scored to Huey Lewis in the News. And when Patrick murders Christine, we only see the net result. A chainsaw has pierced her body, but we don't see the moment of impact. The film may bask in Bateman's excessive lifestyle, but never his murderous inclinations, allowing the audience to identify more with the glitz and glamour, and letting him off the hook for his more gruesome misdeeds. So by indulging in Bateman's lifestyle at the expense of his violence, is American Psycho undermining its own satirical depth? Furthermore, many accuse the violence in American Psycho as being explicitly targeted towards women and the lower class, glorifying their grotesque deaths. Nobody even really cares about all the women Patrick killed. It's only Paul Allen that Detective Kimball is concerned about. But is this the point the film is actually trying to make? In a 2015 interview with Dazed, screenwriter Guinevere Turner said, "I very much think American Psycho is a feminist film. It's a satire about how men compete with each other and how in this hyper-real universe we created, women are even less important than your tan or your suit or where you summer. And to me, even though the women are all sort of tragic and killed, it's about how men perceive and treat them." Director Mary Harron reiterates this point, stating, "American Psycho is a great parody of masculinity. It's a send-up. It was accused of being sexist, but to me, it was always an attack and satire of sexism and of male ego." To this point, the film showcases the cavalier attitudes many men have for women.
There are no girls with good personalities.
Patrick lords over women's bodies as if he owns them. At the workplace, Patrick tells his assistant what to wear, and then in bed, he pays women to do as he instructs. Patrick feels that he can do as he pleases with a woman's body, including killing, mutilating, and even eating them. What's more, he thinks he can get away with it. And the cold, cynical truth American Psycho presents is that Patrick's right. He can and does get away with it. So yes, American Psycho satirizes male ego and consumer society, which would make it inherently deep. Yet the net result of the film's impact seems to be upholding the surface value lifestyle that it rails against, making it perhaps not dumb, but a failure nonetheless. Patrick Bateman, despite his monstrous acts, is still lauded as an anti-establishment anti-hero. But in a metatextual turn, this may actually be what the film is about. Patrick Bateman constantly tells other people he's a murderer, to which either they mishear him,
I'm into, murders and executions mostly.
Do you like it?
Well, it depends. Why?
Well, most guys I know who work in mergers and acquisitions really don't like it.
or just dismiss the confession as a joke.
Did you get my message?
Jesus, yes, that was hilarious.
Just as Patrick Bateman confesses his crimes and everyone thinks he's joking or just misinterprets him, American Psycho the film has been either misinterpreted as misogynistic and pro-consumer, or has been treated as a joke and a parody. Yet the issues American Psycho rails against, a status-obsessed society, sexism, and wealth inequality, still remain just as relevant today as they were in the 90s and early 2000s. It's just as Patrick Bateman says at the end of the film.
This confession has meant nothing.
Likewise, American Psycho cynically, and truthfully, ridicules a society run amok, but knows deep down that this confession too will mean nothing. So we're gonna give the film a D, even though it too probably doesn't matter. Thanks to all our patrons. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and before you go, I want to give a shout out to the Rijksmuseum. Similar to Wisecrack, Rijkstube, the Rijksmuseum's YouTube channel, explores pop culture and media. Their series Is This Art discusses what counts as art. From Tarantino films and CGI sequences to memes and the Kardashians, they have films that look at everything going on in our society today through an artistic and analytical lens. Their latest video examines the rather fascinating evolution of political cartoons, which, in case you didn't know, have been around in one form or another since antiquity. While memes may occasionally set Twitter on fire, that's nothing compared to what a series of political cartoons did to the DeWitt brothers back in 1672. Talk about cancel culture. Go watch the video to see what I'm talking about and prepare for a binge, because the stuff on ReichsTube is seriously addicting. So head on over, subscribe, and let them know Wisecrack sent you. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.